Welcome to the show with personal brand authority, Lita Citroen. Lita is an award-winning executive coach, speaker, and author working with clients in over 30 countries. She helps professionals, entrepreneurs, and business leaders manage the way they're perceived by the people who matter most. From leadership development, influence building, to strategic communications and social media positioning, Lita's work is thoughtful, motivating, and practical. Get ready for a great program. Here's Lita.
Well, hello. Happy Tuesday. I'm so thrilled to be with you today because this is going to be a really special program. I designed this Live with Lita to be different from some of the others, and especially to be different from next month. So mark your calendars, August 27 at noon Eastern time, because we are going to be doing a celebration party. We're literally going to have prizes and speakers, and we're going to talk about my new book, which I just got the physical hard copy of, The New Rules of Influence: How to Authentically Build Trust, Drive Change, and Make an Impact. So I knew I wanted today's program to lead into that and really do so in a very specific way. So one of the things, if you've been on my Live with Lita programs before, you know I absolutely love is if you would drop in the chat where you're dialing in from. So we have Scott from Denver. Thank you. Got a compliment. Always welcome. Let us know where you're dialing in from. I know we have people all over the world who are tuned into this program. And today we're going to talk about purpose. We're going to talk about intention and maybe stretching your influence and leadership to serve a community that maybe you don't come from. What does that look like? And I wanted to read something from the book, actually. It's in a chapter, actually, it's in the preface. I began to see that each of us has a purpose, which once we identify it and lean into it, becomes non-negotiable for us. We can try to justify why fulfilling that purpose isn't practical, such as it doesn't pay enough to work with at-risk youth. I'm better off as an accountant. Or I have to focus on providing for my family, even though serving communities in far-reaching corners of the world is what I feel called to do. But we'll never feel fully fulfilled. We can learn to play a part, but it's not the same thing as living the part. Many of us have gone through that. Many of us have gone through our life, our career, our jobs, and felt like we're checking the boxes, we're performing on task, on budget, and delivering what's expected, but we don't feel fulfilled. And what does it mean to actually live your purpose? And what if living your purpose means stepping way outside of what you know and where your experience is? That happened to me. It happened to me, and I shared the experience of that in 2016 when I did my TED Talk, which I know Sabrina's going to drop in the chat, a link to that TED Talk. Because when I stood on that red dot and delivered a message, I was delivering my message, but I was speaking on behalf of a community that I was deeply passionate about, that I wanted to serve, that I felt it was my purpose to help serve, but a community I didn't come from. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. Hi, Charles from, wow, all the way from Alabama. Good for you. Nice to see you here. Don't forget, drop in the chat where you're calling in from, where you're dialing in from. But I stood on that red dot and I talked about my work with the military, my work with a community that I have so much respect for and so grateful for. But when I started working with the military, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what the different branches did. I didn't know what it meant to really serve and sacrifice in that way. And I certainly didn't know what it meant for someone who has given that kind of a commitment and then has to assimilate and reintegrate back into the civilian culture, what that experience was like. But I had a set of tools that I thought was valuable. So standing on that red dot, giving that message, I felt the pressure of not only wanting to do a good job for the hundreds of people in the room, or the thousands or even millions of people streaming it live, or the people who were going to watch the TEDx that lives kind of forever on the internet. But I was speaking to you, those members of our military community who were entrusting me to deliver a message that was real, courageous, and insightful, hopefully so other civilians would want to find a way to serve those who had served just like I did. I'm Mary from Denver. Great to see you. And that obligation, that unwavering commitment to service is what we're going to talk about today. And so I'm going to read one more little part from the book because it really does talk about my guest, and I'm going to introduce her. Being of service and investing in others empowers us to see the frailty of our time on earth, the quick pace at which wrinkles appear, gray hairs sprout, and our step slows. We begin to see our own lives as if we're far out in space, looking back on the planet and realizing how small we truly are on that blue dot over there, our home country. The smallness of our lives is made bigger and more significant when we give to others and when we serve. And the power of service could not be any more clearly exemplified than by the woman I'm inviting as my guest today, who I have known for a very long time. I'm going to read her bio, but trust me, it doesn't even do justice to who she is. Heather Ehle Ray is a visionary, the founder and the CEO of Project Sanctuary. With over 25 years of experience as a registered nurse and a healthcare manager, she established Project Sanctuary in 2007 when she was inspired by the immense sacrifices of military families during multiple deployments. Even though Heather's a civilian like myself, Heather engaged with the military community. She listened to their needs and crafted evidence-based programs that foster physical and emotional healing. Her leadership and advocacy continues to build a passionate team purposefully dedicated to supporting military families. And I will tell you, I am on the board of directors of Project Sanctuary. And if I had respect for Heather before getting on the board, I mean, I'm just blown away by what you've been able to do. So welcome to today's program, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me, Lita. I am excited to be here.
Well, we're going to dive in because your story is so interesting. Tell us about a moment or an event or a situation that, as a civilian, woke you up to serving in such a different way.
So it started probably way back when, during the first Gulf War. I was a registered nurse in Estes Park, and families were dealing with Gulf War illness, and they were sick, and the whole families would come into our little clinic to look for help and support. And I just remember a very sick service member, veteran, and a wife and kids, and everybody's worried, and they're in our waiting room looking for help and support. And it really just stuck with me. Why are these families here? Why are we not doing a better job? My goodness, they've sacrificed so much. We have to do better.
Well, and you're a civilian, right? Did you have a military connection? Did you have a lot of friends who were from the military? Other than that experience, what was your context?
Yeah, so you fast forward back to 2017, and I honestly did not know any military families when I started Project Sanctuary. My dad had served in the Air Force.
Okay.
Long ago. He served a little over 3 years as punishment for flunking out of college. But I didn't grow up in a typical military family, but we obviously had a lot of respect for our service members in our military.
So when did you make the decision, right? You have this thriving career. When did you make a decision that maybe I need to do something different, right? Maybe this thing that's tugging at me needs to not be a hobby or a part-time gig, but needs to be something full-time.
So the real story is, so obviously serving our Gulf War veterans left a mark on me. And I was in California at a leadership retreat, and I was literally meditating in the mountains on the side of a cliff. And I had a vision of a retreat center fully built.
Wow.
In the mountains, and we were able to serve and give support and education and give the love that these military families really needed. And I came out of that vision and I walked away from that retreat thinking, but I don't know any military families. Why in the world would I do this? This doesn't make sense. God, what is going on? Why wouldn't you give me this vision? But it wouldn't go away. And then once I had the vision, that was it. Took a few years of arguing with God and talking to veterans and what do you need? How can I serve? And I recognized there was a huge gap. So many organizations, they're wonderful, but they serve just the veteran.
Right.
And I really felt like the whole family served, and the whole family, if we could help them heal together, they could support one another. And so there was a huge gap and a need, and my life took a left turn.
And one of the things I talk about in the book, which I know you've had a chance to read, is the power of courage, right? So we can have those tapes running that says, gosh, it would be great to do this, or what could it look like if, I served a community that maybe it doesn't pay as well, or it doesn't have the success label that my current job has. But having the courage to act on that's something else. Did you have to you said you negotiated with God. Did you have to sort of draw that courage from yourself in a way?
Well, I drew the courage from a couple of glasses of wine and an anniversary. And it was just, all of a sudden, it was just crystal clear. This was something I needed to do. So I went to LegalZoom. I incorporated. I literally Googled how to start a nonprofit. And I woke up the next morning. I'm like, holy cow, here we go. And it was exciting and it was scary. And I really relied on everyone else to help me, whether it be Google or other leaders in the field or foundations or grant writers, just asking lots of questions. Here I come. I'm full of passion. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And I knew I was going to work harder than anybody else.
Well, I love that you say that this became sort of non-negotiable. I think about when I started my company in 2008, a year after you, and I had never wanted to be a business owner. I mean, I liked a paycheck. I liked PTO. I liked an office that somebody else negotiated the rent for. I had no aspirations of being a business owner until it became the most obvious thing I'd ever seen. And then to your point, when you lean into that, it's almost like a calm comes over you. You know how to ask questions. You're not shy to ask the questions. And I did the same thing. I asked so many questions because I had done a lot of things in 20 years in corporate, but I'd never started a company. And to your point, it's almost like a calm. You don't have that tension of, should I don't know, maybe. It's just obvious. And it's that unwavering commitment to something you're passionate about. And you also, not being prior military, probably had an extra burden similar to what I came into when I worked with the military of why you? Like, why not somebody who has more of that military connection anchor? How did you negotiate that or navigate that?
That was really rough in the beginning. So in 2017, we were just in the heart of Iraq and Afghanistan, and there were a lot of nonprofits popping up left and right to support our wounded, ill service members and veterans. And I got called out several times. You're a civilian. Are you in it just to make money for yourself?
Yep.
Who is this blonde chick? Why is she in here? She doesn't have any connections to military. And I'm like, no, I'm not in it to make money. If I was, I wouldn't start a nonprofit. That's silly. The other thing is it's something bigger than me. But I knew my purpose and I knew my passion. I knew I was meant to serve these families. I knew I was almost somehow selected to be their spokesperson, to be that intermediary and to give them a voice and to say what I don't believe they were being heard. A lot of times families still aren't being heard, but oh yeah, I got lots of questions. It was a tough field to break into. It took a while to fit in and assimilate.
And I understand it, as I'm sure you do. There are perhaps people who try to capitalize on when the military is certainly in our focus more than it might be today. So there's a reluctance and there's a protectedness. But I think you have been such a groundbreaker for letting a lot of us come after you in the military space, just saying, no, this isn't about money. Like, we make money in other places, or in your case, you've got an organization. Nonprofit means that. But you still want to do good work. And I did see that Evelyn joined from Seattle. Hi, Evelyn. Evelyn and I did a program a couple months ago, also very similar theme. So both of you should connect, because she's also really good people. So did it have anything to do with being female, some of the resistance? Did you run into any reluctance or pushback around rank and title? Because we know that the military runs a very different hierarchy, and it's gotten much better. But how did you navigate some of that?
Oh, absolutely. That certainly came into play. And there was a lot of education that I needed to do on my part. I will give them full credit. I needed to get up to speed. I needed to learn the culture. I needed to assimilate into those that I was serving. And just having people say, oh, silly girl, you can't mix in enlisted with officers. It'll never work in your retreats. And I'm like, but we're not about rank in our retreats. Our retreats are about the Smith family and the Jones family. And it does work. And they'd go, oh, silly girl, you can't mix in female veterans with male veterans. And I'm like, of course I can. And then I would hear back from my female veterans, why do you think I joined the Army? I like campfires. I like guns. I like hanging out with guys. And I'm like, okay, we're fine. But, you know, I heard all the criticisms, and I felt the pressure. But just take it slow, and just talking to the families and figuring out what was our best fit and what was best for our families.
And I love that you say that, because, you know, something that's so important if you're going to represent a community that you don't inherently come from is to listen and learn, right? And ask yourself, are you the right person to do this? And I'm sure you had those conversations with yourself. Are you the right person to do this? And then learn everything you can, trying to strip away those preconceived ideas, those unconscious biases about what you believe to be true versus what they're telling you they need and what is true for them. And I really believe we can lead and influence communities we don't come from. I think that's what makes everything so exciting going forward. And it sounds like that's really what you took the time to do yourself.
Well, and it was also surrounding myself with veterans. And to this day, Project Sanctuary is a healthy mix of veterans, military spouses, and civilians. And that is across the board with our staff and with our board of directors, because I believe that we all can come together to better serve. And we each bring our uniqueness and our own perspectives. And I think that makes us a stronger organization, because we're not 100% military based, that we can help bridge some gaps that way.
Well, another thing I'll say that I really appreciate about the organization is that we don't define family.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about that, because that's pretty groundbreaking, especially in the military culture. So talk a little bit about what that looks like. How did you get to that conclusion that it's not up to us to define what the family is?
Well, everybody has their own version of their family. It may not be mom, dad, and 2 kids. Typically, that is who we serve. But occasionally, family can be a mom caring for a wounded or ill service member or veteran. Sometimes it is same-sex couples, their families too, absolutely. Sometimes it is battle buddies coming together, because that is their family. We had one veteran that came with his dog because he said that's the only family he had left. And that was just so impactful. Drove all the way from Florida. I'll never forget that. And then he was actually able, because of the skills he learned in the retreats, he was able to go back and forge a relationship with his son and come back and volunteer with his son a couple of years later. So
that's awesome.
That was a happy ending. That was a great story. But it's not up to me to define family. It's who is on your healing path with you that you want. to have a better connection with.
Well, and as we know, when we heal the family, then we're affecting everything downstream from that. Divorce rates, domestic violence, suicide, the kids are growing up in a healthy environment. And it's just not assuming that once mom or dad comes back from service, that the family just knows how to congeal again. That, that there are some disconnects and there's been some trauma maybe. And it's how do you heal that and put everybody on the right path? And that's a pretty ambitious goal for an organization. It's a pretty ambitious goal for a blonde chick from from Colorado. One of the things you've talked about is how important it is to be visible, right? And we know that to have influence, you have to be visible. It is one of the rules. Tell me a little bit about that, because you describe yourself as an introvert, or, somebody who doesn't enjoy the limelight as much, but you've had to in order to advocate on their behalf. Talk about that.
Yeah. So being an introvert, so I get my energy from being alone. And serving the military families is something bigger than myself. It's something that I need to do. A lot of times I just ask for guidance. I say my prayers, and then I go out. I may have to take a few extra restroom breaks, to breathe and collect myself. But it's really not about me. It's about my families. And I'm there and I'm pushing myself to get their message across and remind people about their sacrifices and their needs and what needs to be done. And it is about being recognized. So sometimes I may put on red heels. I like to stand out. I like to be memorable, because if I'm memorable, then maybe they're going to remember my message, and maybe they're going to remember, hey, what about the family?
Well, tell us you have a funny story about the first time you gave a presentation.
Oh, I threw up. It was horrible. Public speaking was just the worst thing ever. It was terrible. And there's just no easy way around it other than remembering that it's not about me. It is not about me. I'm speaking for the families, and for God to speak through me is so important. And then with a lot of practice, and you get better at it. And then after a while, you get your confidence. It's like, give me that microphone. I've got a message. I've got people I serve. And then it actually becomes a little bit more fun.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, and I shared that in the opening that, like when I stood on the red circle of the TEDx, I felt like I was there speaking on behalf of a community that I was so passionate about, but that I didn't come from. But we also have to draw that personal connection, and your ability to influence, corporations, other veteran serving organizations, military families, means not only do you speak on their behalf, but you have to share your why and your story. And sometimes that's difficult, right? We're passionate about who we serve and who we want to lead, but we don't want to be part of the equation, because then it feels like the focus is on us. So what I'm hearing from you is you kind of figured out, as many of us did, that we have to use our visibility to speak on their behalf, but also tie it to why we feel we're the right person.
Right. It's so tricky to do that, because I don't want the focus on myself, but yet it is on myself, but I am the spokesperson. So it is pretty complicated to weave it in there. So a lot of times when I do public speaking, I've gotten permission from some of my veterans or my favorite stories to be able to tell their story, to bring it back to a personal level.
I love that. What else do you think has been a key to your success? You obviously found this path. You got the vision, you leaned into it, you put all the pieces in place, talked to a lot of people. What else has been a key to your success, do you think, in building for a first of its kind, evidence-based therapeutic retreat center program for military families, which didn't exist at the time? What else made that happen, do you think?
I think it's surrounding yourself by the right people. So I think people, passion, purpose, all the P words that you can find, but surrounding yourself with people that are passionate about what you're doing, that have the time, that can help build you up. there's no way one person can do all this. There's just no way. You have to look for the angels. You have to look for the right people. They're going to help guide you, that are going to help move the organization forward. And sometimes you don't even know who that's going to be. It could be a volunteer that really had a life-changing moment at a retreat and went on to tell a high school friend who just happened to work for People magazine. And the next thing you know, you're in People magazine, and that was really cool. But I think success is a lot about just spreading joy and spreading passion and letting others feel that and carry your message as well.
Wow. And I know you talk about surrounding yourself with people who align with the vision and the passion. Maybe they don't have the experience in the same lane. You mentioned your CFO. Yes. And I know you have a funny story around that. Would love to have you share that with folks listening, because it really does talk about stepping out of what we may be traditionally taught it takes to put the structure together.
Yeah, so we needed a CFO, vice president, organizational person to help. So we were hiring, and the requirements were nonprofit history, financial management, CPA would have been great, and military experience. And so JJ popped up and he sent me a note and he said, I have zero nonprofit experience. I'm not a CPA and I'm a civilian, but I really, really want this job. I've learned that I leaned my corporate ladder up against the wrong building. I want to have purpose. And for his second interview, his daughter, I believe, walked by with a piece of paper that said, "Good luck, Daddy."
It was a video interview.
I was done. But it was his passion, and he promised me he would get up to speed. He promised that he would get everything done and he would do everything necessary, and he was excited about this. He was eager, he was passionate, and he had the cutest little girl ever. And it has been one of my best hires, hand down. He is phenomenal. It didn't take him any time to get up to speed. He's immersed himself into the culture and into CPA and finances and nonprofit. One of my best hires ever.
I love that. And you know my story. I mean, I've certainly, hiring has not been my strongest suit as a business owner, but then in 2020, you know, this woman approached me and said, I really want to work with you. And I said, well, I'm not sure. And then she kept saying that. And she talked about how passionate she was for my mission and what I was trying to get done. And didn't have a background in anything that I was talking about, definitely had a marketing background. And, you know, 4+ years later, Sabrina, who everybody knows is managing the chat and produces this whole thing. I mean, she's become so ingrained into my culture at Leda 360 and also into my heart. So I totally get that. I think, you know, we learn that through the military work is you can teach somebody skills. You can't teach them to have the same passion for what you're trying to get done. And when you find that passion, if there's an aptitude, then you can teach the skills. That's not the hard part. And I just love that you leaned into that as a founder and a CEO as well. What do you think is the future for your organization? Where do you see it going?
Oh, you know, and that's sort of like an inside personal joke. It's like, I'm all out of vision. I just.
Oh, I don't think so, Heather.
I had the one vision. But the original vision was to build a retreat center in the mountains so that military families would always have a home, a place to heal, a sanctuary, a place to go. And last year we made that a reality. Or we started to make that reality, and we were able to purchase a 42-acre retreat center in Pagosa Springs. It is a sanctuary. You can feel the love and the peace. Yeah. It is, I am so excited for our families to be able to experience it. But right now it's set up for 120 students, which does not equate to military housing. I can't reconnect mom and dad in bunk beds. So we have a lot of work to do to bring it up to speed, to get it ready for families, and to truly build something that's worthy of their sacrifice and their service, and something that'll go on way past myself that they will always have.
I love that. There's a book I read about 100 years ago called The Cathedral Within.
Mhm.
And the book talks about how there's a difference between when an architect and a designer is designing a church versus a cathedral. Because the old cathedrals, if you see them in Europe and around this country, I mean, they're works of art, and they take place over multiple decades to get built. How does that original vision get translated when you have, a change of architect, a change of contractor, a change of designer? If that vision is strong enough, it carries through. And I think that's what you're describing, is that you've set the vision so that, multiple generations to come will be able to take this vision and continue to build and develop and add tweaks to it as the community needs.
Yeah. And
That's really cool. So, no, go ahead. I was just going to say, before you say that, folks, I know you've got questions, you've got thoughts for Heather. Go ahead and put them in the chat, because we're going to get to those in just a moment. Please tell us what you were going to say.
No, I love that story. And also, I can have the original vision, but I also can't have 100% ownership. So I have to be able to listen and let go and watch what happens, because sometimes when you start taking those little left turns, or you get the different architect, or something else changes, it's for the best. And something turns out even better than what you could have originally imagined.
Well, and to that point, in the book, I talk about inclusivity, and not inclusivity as an HR mandate, but inclusivity as a mindset, and trusting your vision enough, whether your vision is to run your team differently, or maybe run your company, or start a nonprofit, or start a movement, whatever your vision is, to have the confidence in what seed has been planted that you're mulling over, to be open to input from other people, to ask questions, and then not challenge and refute, but explore and consider. It doesn't mean you're losing anything or you're giving up. It just means your idea is getting richer and bigger and richer and bigger. And you might hear something that you never would have considered if you had just stayed in the lane of your own thinking. And that's difficult for a lot of professionals, business leaders, thought leaders today, who think their idea, is the right way. But we know that the world changes. And if you question that, just remember March of 2020. The world changes, things change, and we need to be able to consider different ideas, consider a different path, consider a different community, maybe.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So again, put those questions in the chat. And let me just end with a question for Heather before we move into questions that folks listening have. What do you think, looking back over 17 years, why do you think it was supposed to be you that started this vision, this idea, which has now become so much bigger than yourself? Why was it supposed to be you?
It's hard for me to try and put it all together. I didn't go to school to do this, obviously. I went to school to be a registered nurse, but I actually had a rocky start in school. So I first went for psychology, and then I ended up doing industrial organizational psychology, which I really, really loved. My mom was a social worker. I loved healthcare. I loved helping people. I ended up in business classes for way too many years. And then I started nursing school. And you put all that together and you kind of get a nonprofit. My nursing career was home care and hospice. So I would go into the home, and sometimes it's not the patient that needs the education. Sometimes you need to involve the whole family so that that person has the best chance of succeeding. And then it's involving the community. So I took that model to the military community, to the families that were reaching out for help and saying, I need help. Okay, let's empower everyone so that you can learn. We always had classes. From day one, we've had classes at Project Sanctuary. I want them to walk away with tools and skills and be a better family unit. I want to create that generational change. So I think just through my history and my experiences just sort of led me this way. And I think it is purpose driven.
And it was supposed to be you. It was supposed to be you. whether you like that or not, sometimes we resist that. But if it's supposed to be you, good luck navigating that, because it's going to happen
Whether
one
you want
way or
to or
another.
not.
One way or another. Well, I know that every family that Project Sanctuary has served, thanks you. They thank you profusely. They become involved in the organizations. But I think even those of us who don't have a military family, we benefit, because these are our neighbors, our coworkers, our employees, our bosses. They're people we see in our community. And when they're happy and they're thriving and they're healthy, it just benefits everyone. So I think all of us owe you a big round of applause and gratitude for everything that you've put in place.
I just feel so honored every day to be able to wake up and do what I do, and know that it is appreciated. But I get a ton of help from people. There's, again, no way one person can do everything that has been done.
Well, fabulous. Well, I do want to just leave everybody with, some of the things that Heather talked about. And if you have those questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. If you've got comments, you want to just give Heather a virtual hug, go ahead and put all that in the chat, and Sabrina will bring it forward when we have a second. So when I think about what you've done, you've talked about seeing a need in the market, seeing an opportunity, not quite sure you were the right person, but it was a seed that was planted. And then at a retreat that you're at, having some real deep prayer, the idea became almost non-negotiable for you. And you started asking questions. You put the idea out there. You started Googling how to start a nonprofit, which cracks me up. I'm sure you found a lot of information. And it was sort of trying and testing and listening and surrounding yourself and asking questions. And then it just sort of took momentum. It took that momentum to make it happen. And I think sometimes when we hear stories of success like yourself, it just seems so big, right? And somebody listening might think, well, I don't want to start a nonprofit, or I don't want to start my own company. I just want to know that when I'm in a meeting and I raise my hand, that someone's going to take me seriously, that my voice matters. And I think as people listening, as you hear Heather's story, just know it doesn't have to be another huge organization that's affecting, thousands of families. It can be on a smaller scale. But asking the questions, surrounding yourself with the right people, and really listening and learning and loving is what makes us successful. So, we have a question here from Evelyn. Oh, she talks about founder syndrome.
Oh, yay.
Okay. First of all, Evelyn loved your red heels. I think we all agree with that. Let's see this one. Founder syndrome. And Evelyn works very closely with nonprofits and corporations, doing a lot of what we're talking about here. Can limit the scope of organizational growth. What advice do you have for other leaders who need systems or reminders to make room for more voices? Oh, thank you for that.
That's a
Evelyn.
question.
Great question.
Yeah, I do not resemble founder syndrome at all. Yes, I do.
Well, but what advice would you have?
Well, it is about empowering, especially my team. So hiring the best I can. Carrie's absolutely the best she can be in development. We may not always get along. We may not always agree, but it's not about me. So also that's the other part, remembering that it's not about myself, but hiring the best. Missy's absolutely the best in her field. Hiring and letting go and recognizing it's not about me. It doesn't have to be my way. I may have the experience now after 17 years. I may say, yeah, we kind of tried that back in 2012. Didn't really work. Not trying to be the founder and pull that red card, but yeah, getting out of everybody's way and honoring their work and their talents and letting them, I would love to work myself out of the job. So I'm trying to reverse, because it can hinder an organization. It is a very real thing and something to always keep in top of mind.
Fabulous. I see that, Sabrina had a question she put in the chat. Sabrina, bring yours forward. What advice do you have for others looking to use their voice to advocate for underrepresented communities? And let's face it, military families, like you said, very underrepresented voice. Thanks for that, Sabrina.
Wow, that's another great question. So when you're representing other groups, I would say bring those personal stories because that's what's going to touch others. You have to have that personal testimony. It has to be about relationships. And I connect best with an audience or someone I'm speaking with, or just one on one when I can relate a story that's going to touch their heart. Or maybe it's something that um, if I'm speaking to a woman's group, then I'm going to talk more about the military spouses or the mothers. Or if I'm talking more to a men's group, I'm going to talk more about the veterans. So knowing your audience and then trying to be that bridge in between those that you serve and those that you want to influence.
Well, and speaking of influence, if you haven't checked it out, you can pre-order the new Rules of Influence. Storytelling, to your point, is one of the rules. And yes, please pre-order. We'll send you an advance copy of a chapter, not a whole book. We'll send you an advance chapter of a copy so you can start reading on your own before the book comes. And make sure you mark your calendars for August 27th because we're going to have a party online. It's so cool. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think we have to learn to tell stories. I think we can also tell other people's stories too much. And that's where I think what you've done really well, I know Evelyn does this really well too, is telling their story, but wrapping it in your own, right? Talking about the impact that it made on you, the way that you felt. It almost gives people in the audience permission to feel the same thing. Would you agree?
Great point. Absolutely. 100%.
Fabulous. I see we've got, hi, Rob. Great to see you too. I'm just checking out the comments here. What questions? Oh, Charles says, nicely done, Heather. We either build bridges and close gaps or we remain in insulated silos. How do maybe Charles's point actually makes me think of other veteran organizations because you work really collaboratively with other organizations who might be competing for the same donors and the same funders. You're all trying to serve the same community in different ways, coming in different doors. But how has that played out?
So I really come from a place and a philosophy of abundance. I believe there is plenty for everyone to go around. And I also believe in the 1 + 1 is 3. I think when we work together, we create something even bigger or better. I don't need to do emergency housing. I don't need to do veteran employment. I don't need to be the expert in all the fields. I know what we do and what we do really well, but it's also very important for me to reach out to those organizations and to share best practices or to share resources or to share whatever we can. A billion years ago, we got together as several organizations and started something called R4 Alliance, and it was beautiful. We shared all the resources. And I think it's in the best interest of those that we're serving, that we are well connected and respected.
I love that. And the word of the day is abundance, right? We can lead from scarcity, which means all we're focused on is what we don't have or don't have enough of, or worried we might lose it. Or we can just know that, the world is a great place. It's a beautiful place. There's more than enough for everyone.
Yes.
And so we can share, we can be inclusive, we can welcome everybody into the tent because we can just always make more if we need to.
Yes. Leave room for miracles.
Leave room for miracles. Don't put it in the business plan, but yes, leave room for miracles. Any other questions, Sabrina? I'm not seeing any other questions. We're getting lots of positive comments and people are loving this conversation. If I don't see any other questions, Heather, what would you like to leave us with today? What's a final thought that we can take away from your life, your career, what you've built, and what we can learn from that?
Well, thank you, obviously, for having me on, and thank you for a few years of friendship. Has been, yeah, you've really helped me in a lot of ways. What is your reputation? What do you want to put forth to the world? So always remembering who it is you are, what you want to project. And that goes for your business as well. You only get one chance to have a great reputation in business. You've got to do it well. And just lead with purpose and passion. Believe in your people and just trust the process.
Love that. What a great way to finalize and put a bow on today's program. Heather, you inspire me. I know you inspire the people on the board. You inspire your staff, and you certainly inspire all of those military families who are better today, having known you and Project Sanctuary. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing some words of wisdom and a little bit of humor and some more insight into who you are. I really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Lita.
And to everyone out there, again, join us August 27. We're doing an online party. Heather will be there, I'm sure. And we're going to have prizes. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about just a lot of great learning. It'll be a lot of fun wherever you are in the world. We tried to time it so multiple time zones could join us. But I'd really love you to be with me and celebrate on August 27, the actual release date of the new Rules of Influence. If you do pre-order it, let us know so we can send you a chapter to start reading today. In the meantime, until then, I wish you great luck, great happiness, and great influence building. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.